Okay, thank you, Paula, for the introduction. Let me get this, okay. So, as Paula said, I'm going to talk about matter at extreme conditions. By extreme conditions, in the center where I work, that is the Center for Science at Extreme Conditions, we work with extreme conditions of pressure, temperature, and a magnetic field. My research is mainly on pressure and a little bit of temperature. So this is where I come from, in Edinburgh. My summer is 26 degrees, no this temperature. And in this center, although I work in the physics school, we have engineers, chemists, geology, and astronomers. So that's why, even though I'm a chemist, I am an okay fit in this research center. So what is pressure and why pressure? This is the pressure range that we can find in the universe, 10 to the minus 17 pascals in intergalactic voids, to 10 to the 34 pascals deep inside a neutron star. And just to give you a reference, we live at 10 to the 5 pascals, and the effect of pressures, just from going from the sea, from the life that we know, to the deep sea, where pressure increases by 3 orders of magnitude, life is totally different in the deep sea, not only because of the light, but also because of the pressure and temperature conditions. So with this, what I want to say is that the science that we understand here is very, very different to the science in most of the rest of the universe. So what is pressure? Pressure is equals to force divided by area, and is the pain that we feel when somebody on high heels steps on our toes with the heel, because the weight of the person is resting in the small area of the heel. We actually feel pain, much more pain than if they are not working with high heels. And based on this exact principle, the diamond anvil cell was developed. Diamond anvil cell, as Paula said, is my main working tool. I use it every day. Here we have two opposite truncated anvils of diamonds with flat surfaces facing each other. And this is what we refer as QLED, might have a diameter of 10 to 500 microns, and it allows us to go to pressures up to 400 of 500 gigapascals, of 5 millions of atmospheres. A diamond is transparent in a very broad range of the electromagnetic spectrum. So if we put our sample here between the two anvils and we look with optical spectroscopic techniques, we are able to look at the effects that pressure might have on our sample. Here we have a gray region that I call a gasket. It's a metallic piece that we use as a pan to hold our sample between the two anvils. And to apply pressure, what we do is to bring the two anvils closer together. And what kind of effect can we expect to look at within the diamond anvil cell? The video was a bit, no, you can see ice that we know it forms at low temperature. With pressure, it becomes fluid water, becomes ice as well. In fact, there are today more than 22 solid structures of ice. I have the pleasure to say that we are discovering the number 23, but I'm not going to talk about this. So this is one of the interesting effects. Another one is oxygen. Here we have a view of the anvil from the top. This will be the gasket, and inside we have helium and oxygen. And the oxygen that we breathe not only becomes solid, as we see a crystal, it becomes yellow, and not only that, but at 100 gigapascals, it becomes metallic. It's reflecting light, okay? Another interesting phenomena could be sodium, that by definition we know is a metal. Here we have our chamber here in the middle, full of sodium, reflecting. At 180 gigapascals, it becomes transparent. So we have, depending on the system, the effects that pressure might have on matter are very different. In oxygen, we go from an insulator to a metal. In sodium, we go from a metal to an insulator. Okay, so why do we care about pressure? From the fundamental science point of view, that I think is interesting for me. In the Earth, everybody, I think, knows, as we go towards the core, pressure and temperature increase. So in fact, we have a high pressure experimental lab under our feet. And what we know about the properties of matter here, that are actually controlling the properties of matter here, it's very, very little, because as I said, there are phenomena that we don't expect and do happen with high pressure. Classic example of a high pressure science is graphite from our pencil that is priceless. With pressure, it becomes a diamond. This happens naturally inside the Earth with pressure and temperature, and a natural diamond is very expensive, good for us. Diamond is the metastable form of graphite, and we can recover it. So, as Paula said, my research interests are all around the diamond anvil cell. I use spectroscopy as main diagnostics tool in everyday in my lab. We also do X-ray diffraction that I input here, but that we need to travel to synchrotrons. And we couple optical measurements as well with conductivity measurements. My research interests today are fundamental physical chemistry with simple molecular systems, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, methane, that I will talk today, material science, and geo and planetary science. And today I want to talk about abiogenic production of methane, methane phase diagram in relation to planetary science, and a bit of hydrogen. Highlight, sorry about the typo that I just realized there. These are the main methods I use: diamond anvil cell, resistive heating, and laser heating. That's what I will explain today a bit. And Raman, X-ray, and transform measurements. So the first topic is methane, methane. We know we have in the Earth a formation of natural gas deposits, and there are two theories about how the methane got into those deposits. The one that we are all familiar with is organic matter that decomposes and starts stratifying, going deeper and deeper, and on the way it starts breaking down until it deposits into the gas deposits. This is the one that we all learn in school, but there is also another theory. And as I said before, under our feet, we have a high pressure and a high temperature lab, and things are in constant movement. So it is also possible that here there are reactions happening that in which the hydrocarbons might form, and because they are very light, they might mitigate through different folds towards the crust and accumulate here into the natural gas deposits. I think because we changed the computer, there is something, but okay. So we also know that there is what is known as carbon cycle, that inside the Earth there is a lot of carbon in different allotropic ways, as I said, diamond, graphite, black carbon. And it is possible then that this abiogenic source can happen just because there is carbon, and also we know there is hydrogen. So the question I ask is, do we have do these natural carbon shapes, carbon, graphite, have a role in the production of abiogenic hydrocarbons. So to do so, to explore this, we are going to put in the diamond anvil cell graphite, diamond from the anvil, and black carbon in contact with hydrogen at conditions relevant of pressure and temperature relevant to the lithosphere of upper mantle that will correspond to pressures of 2 gigapascals and 500 C and 4 gigapascals and 750 C. And we apply heat with resistive heating. So we do this by Raman spectroscopy. Here I show you the Raman spectra or characteristic features from methane to detect if methane is forming. This is the carbon-hydrogen stretching modes, and these are the characteristic features of hydrogen with the hydrogen-hydrogen stretching mode. So when we load our sample with hydrogen and we start heating, just hydrogen is in direct contact with the anvils, we notice that there is a new feature in the region of 2900 wave numbers that increases in intensity with time and stays upon quench. So it seems like methane is forming. I mark here in yellow these parts of the gasket because it's known that metals can be catalyzed in the production of hydrocarbons. So we try to isolate the hydrogen molecules from the gasket as well. That is rhenium that I didn't say. We also coated our gasket and our diamonds with an insulating layer of alumina 203, and we repeat the experiment by heating, and we see that with time and higher temperatures there is a minimal contribution of methane. So probably this methane is forming through cracks into the alumina, but our conclusion is if you prevent the contact between the diamond and the hydrogen, the reaction is prevented. This is exactly the same, and this is where I say through these folds here that we see upon quench is probably the points at which hydrogen got in contact with the anvil, and that's why we see a small contribution of methane. We repeated the experiment with classic carbon or with graphite, and again we see clear formation of methane. So we can conclude that when there are reservoirs of different allotropes of carbon, either diamond, graphite, or classic carbon, if they are in contact with hydrogen, they can act as a biogenic source of methane. So I talk about methane here in the Earth, but methane is a very important molecule for planetary purposes. Here I show you a diagram of Neptune, and we see that under the atmosphere there is a 36% of methane that is found at very high temperatures and very high pressures. It is expected, or before it was expected, that methane at these conditions not only will decompose, but it will form what is known as diamond rain. I can tell you why. Here I showed you the previous phase diagram published in 2013, where they heated using the laser different molecules of methane. Here we have temperature, here we have pressure, and we have different solid phases of methane. And what we point here is that with temperature, with laser heating, methane will decompose, and this carbon will be diamond carbon, and it will further react to form longer oligomers. And I point out the fact of using laser because to me it was key. So we wanted to reproduce this experiment and study the phase diagram and possible decomposition of methane with pressure and temperature. Here I show the same diagram, but the diagram that I'm going to be working with, in which I put different colors for each of the solid phases. Again, we use Raman spectroscopy as diagnostic. I'm going to talk about isothermal compression or isobaric heating. We can distinguish very well with Raman if it's fluid or if we are in phase 1, that is here in orange, cubic structure, what is called as phase 8 rhombohedral, phase 7, sorry, rhombohedral, phase 8 cubic, phase 9 distorted cubic. And we see that, for instance, phase 8 has 2 features, phase 9 has like 10 different features. So we can clearly, Raman is our technique because we can use it in-house. And importantly, we can differentiate the fluid, that's what we are interested in. The phase diagram of methane is a bit special because it has a kinetically controlled phase transition. It's called as a sluggish transition. It takes time to go from phase 7 to phase 8. And in fact, if you compress, and this is at 13 GPa, but if you compress to 113 gigapascals and you leave it resting for weeks or even months, this transition will never happen. We compress, we heat it from this phase A7 without any waiting and heat it, and we see that at 20 GPa, no transition 7 to 8 occurs, but obviously when there is a kinetically hindered transition, the first thing that you think is how I'm going to promote this with temperature. At 20 GPa, it doesn't happen, but at 34 GPa, it does. We do observe this other transition. At low pressures, we reproduce we observe the transition from 7 to 8 and then to fluid, and this puts us or enables us to draw this melting line in blue for the fluid that is much higher than the previously reported melting line that I said it was done with laser heating. Now we are doing resistive heating, and this will be solid, 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 and then here we see the fluid in which the grain boundaries, these lines here, have disappeared. We reproduce the same experiment at higher pressures. Here the melting is even clearer because these particles here that are pressure marker drops, they drop when we melt. And again, here in the phase diagram, we plot our experimental points of temperature versus pressure in fluid. In blue, we have the fluid, and this is closer to 300 C higher than previously reported. We did this experiment many more times, enabling us to draw this phase diagram that I call a kinetic phase diagram. And we did the same kind of experiments in this time, waiting for the sluggish transition to happen. So we will start heating from phase 8, and we draw these other transition points, different colors for different phases. And we came to draw this full phase diagram, that this will be the equilibrium phase diagram. We see that methane has this kind of layer or onion-like structure for the different solid phases. And the most important is that where previously melting and reactivity was observed, we do not see that. And we draw thermodynamical or the stable phase diagram and the kinetic phase diagram with phase A. And as I said, here I mark the points or the triangle with a previous decomposition and even diamond formation was observed during experiments with laser heating, and this is why before, for planets like Uranus, the diamond ring was established, and now we put this into questions. And in fact, looking into the literature, we realized that there are many claims about the composition of methane for planetary relevant conditions, but all of them are doing laser heating experiments. And if we go back and reproduce the experiments that other people have done with laser heating, This is the Raman spectra of methane during heating with an infrared laser. We see here at 1380 Kelvin, we start seeing this mode here that, as I presented before, is the hydrogen stretching mode. And upon quench, we see loads of hydrogen and the formation of a kind of van der Waals methane hydrogen compound. So light does play an important role into the decomposition of methane, and it's not only pressure and temperature as it was previously established. And if we reproduce the same kind of experiments at low pressures, again, we see the formation of hydrogen. So not only in these conditions that was previously established, also this decomposition will happen with light at low pressures. So with this, these are the results of the work that we recently published. It was commented, and it put in value that our results indicate that what previously was thought about the formation of diamond in these planets is very controversial and needs revision, because light, as many of you know, can trigger a lot of reactions, and it's not only pressure or temperature. And the fact is that all these works are done by physicists, and I think my background as chemist and with Paula before that we talked about X-streamers and reactivity on the excited states made me think maybe light is contributing. In methane, it does. So now I want to talk about the last part of my research. I invested since 2017. I moved in Edinburgh. I started working with hydrogen and with hydrides. The reason is because we are looking for high temperature superconductors. Superconductors are materials capable of conducting electricity without any resistance. So they expel a magnetic field when cooled below a critical temperature, TC. I will refer to this temperature as TC. These are important for many applications. The most popular ones are for these levitating trains that you know they exist in China, or overall for medical technology, because now if you go to get an MRI, the machines require a lot of cooling, and it requires a lot of energy. So it's thought that hydrogen, first it was thought hydrogen will be a high temperature superconductor. This is a holy grail of the high pressure research, because it initially was expected to be superconductor at 25 gigapascals. I think I put it, why is it transitioning? Now we, as I saw later, we are close to 400 gigapascals, and still the superconductivity of methane, of hydrogen, or the metallic state of hydrogen is very controversial and not clear that when will happen. We don't know the pressure, so it's in the experimental limits of what we can do in the lab. But this is the main reasoning, because hydrogen is very light, and according to the BCS theory, the TC, the critical temperature, is inversely proportional to the square root of the mass. The mass of hydrogen is is the smallest. We cannot have any atom with a smaller mass. So the TC will be very high. Problem, pressure. So this is what I said. Metallic hydrogen was expected to be superconducting, and this was suggested in 1968. What is expected is that with pressure, you bring the atoms closer together, and instead of having discrete molecules of hydrogen, you form a 3D solid with elongated hydrogen distances. And then this will allow to have electron-phonon couplings. The electrons from hydrogen will form an electronic cloud coupled to the phonons, and this should be a superconductor with a high critical temperature. as I said, we are many years later, and people had reached up to 460 gigapascals. The closure of the band gap is still controversial. Nobody has proven if it's a superconductor at all. And it doesn't seem feasible that we could put into our hospital, the mass that we can put in the diamond Amber cell is of nanograms. I don't see big presses of diamonds working in the hospital. So we need to bring pressure lower. So after the big challenges of increasing, of reaching this predicting metallic state, Ashcroft in 2004 suggested that by doping hydrogen with metals, what is called chemical precompression, could reduce considerably the pressure required to break these molecules and form this atomic state of hydrogen, enable the electron-phonon coupling. So since 2004, and here I show you the characteristic features that we will expect if we go from an insulator, resistivity versus temperature, to something superconducting, resistivity versus temperature. We will see upon cooling a drop towards zero resistance below the critical temperature. So since 2004, there have been many, and today more and more theoretical works predicting superconducting hydrides. Here I mark the most studied groups of the periodic table, but I can guarantee you that there are combinations in theory with everything. In fact, I received recently an email from a theoretician who asked me, because for reasons that I will explain later, we are moving now to combinations of not only binary single elements with hydrogens, we are moving towards ternaries. And the theoretician, who is a student, asked me, why are there not more works on ternaries, on experimental ternaries? And I thought, because you are sitting on your computer and you do click and you get that things are superconducting, but for instance, this prediction was done in 2012, calcium 86, and the experimental realization was in 2024. So between theory, sitting in the computer, to experiment, these experiments are very challenging, and it takes a lot of time and a high level of expertise, and also having the techniques. So as I indicated before, what we aim is for technical purposes. What we want is that in our hospital we don't require high levels of cooling. This is liquid nitrogen cooling with conventional superconductors. We want to be able to have superconductivity properties at conditions as close as possible as room temperature. As I said before, because hydrogen has a very low mass, hydrides are super good to have a high temperature, high critical temperature. And in fact, there are several hydrides already, like lanthanum hydride and H3S, that are the first ones that were synthesized and proven to be real, with critical temperatures of 203 Kelvin and 250 Kelvin. Problem, this is 155 gigapascals and 170 gigapascals. So to reach these pressures, I need to have QLEDs of 50 to 60 to 70 microns. To put you in perspective, a hair can have a thickness of 30 to 50 microns. So that gives you a bit of the indication of the amount of sample that you are going to be working with, and also of the difficulty. And key difference to prove from conventional experiments is that to prove that the sample is superconducting, Conventionally, we just load our sample chamber with the sample here, and we do optical spectroscopy, measuring through the diamonds. Here, we place electrodes, deposit electrodes, or place them by hand on the sample chamber. So here will be a photo of the electrodes. They are tungsten coated with gold to prevent reactivity of hydrogen with electrodes. I don't know where the pointer is. And here we will have, instead of a metallic gasket that is easy to work with, we work with insulating gaskets. So this will be my sample chamber. And what we do is to load our sample together with hydrogen. We have a hydrogen gas loader. This is the only hydrogen gas loader in the UK. Metal plus hydrogen, and then we conduct our optical Raman spectroscopy experiments, and we do resistivity measurements as a function of temperature to prove exactly, as I said, how the resistance changes with temperature. I say I have worked maybe with more than 20 hydrates, metallic hydrates. Only one happened to have some measurable superconductivity. It's the one that I'm going to talk to you now. It's lanthanum and hydrogen. It's not lanthanum H10. That is the one that was first established. We are trying to reduce the pressure needed for this superconductivity. When we put lanthanum, this is a photo of the sample chamber. Here we did first X-ray diffraction. That's how we start. Scott, you hear it well? Okay. So all of our experiments, we don't start because of the difficulty by putting the electrodes and see what happens. First, we do the synthesis, do Raman characterization. We go to synchrotron, see what type of a structure we form and how stable it is. And then if we see something normally very symmetric, seems like it's going to be good. And we might put the electrodes or contact a theoretician and see is it worth doing transport measurements. Normally they tell you yes, because I think for them everything is superconductor. But this is a sample of gasket of rhenium. The whole, the transparent part is hydrogen, and the dark part will be lanthanum. And in here, we hit it at 85 gigapascals, and in blue, we see the diffraction peaks of something cubic with a structure of Pn-3n that is stable to pressures below 1 gigapascal. We don't see the hydrogen lattice, but with the help of the theoreticians, we see that they form lanthanum and hydrogen form this kind of beautiful structure with cages of H20 and H24. When we look at how the volume, to see how much hydrogen we have, and we plot the volume per formula unit of lanthanum versus pressure, and these lines will correspond to the addition of volume of one lanthanum and different atoms of hydrogen, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 7, and the blue dots are our experimental volumes. We see that upon decompression, there is a change of stoichiometry that is supported as well by theory. Here we put the enthalpy plot and how as pressure decreases, lower amount of hydrogens are more stable, but we are still retaining the same kind of metallic framework. We thought it was interesting, a bit curious, and we decided anyway to measure the resistance versus pressure. And what we plot here is resistance versus pressure. We have that at low pressures, this is measured upon decompression actually, so I can go in this direction. Upon decompression at between 110 and 98 gigapascals, we see a very low resistance characteristic of a metal, but upon decompression, we see a sharp increase of resistance that we think it can be, or we think no, it can be explained by the drop of hydrogen. So we are retaining the form of the hydride that we want, but we are losing hydrogen, and This is obviously bad because it's not metallic, and then therefore it cannot be a superconductor. But in this other regime here, we do see when we measure resistance versus temperature that upon cooling there is a sharp decrease on resistance characteristic of the superconducting transition. To be honest, we started with these measurements at high pressures, and we thought when we were plotting the temperature versus pressure, we thought, oh, this is great because temperature seems to be going up, because here we are still very close to liquid nitrogen temperatures. It seems to be going up. Maybe if we extrapolate, because this is stable to 2 gigapascals, we got it. We have something that is a high temperature superconductor at low pressures. But unfortunately, there is a dehydrogenation in the process, meaning that at low pressure, we have the metallic frame is stable, but here I put in blue hydrogens, in red and black other hydrogens. High pressure, these sites are occupied, they are good for superconductivity. Low pressures, these sites, the black and the red ones get empty, and we lose the superconducting character. So long story short, we are still searching for the high temperature, low pressure superconductivity based on hydrides. We are exhausting the periodic table, working with binary systems, and now we are starting to work with ternary systems. Things get much messier because it's very difficult to control stoichiometries, and it's very difficult to gauge the direction of the reaction. So I guess we'll have to wait a bit of time to see these results. So with this, I hope you enjoyed. I brought you a bit of the work we do in Edinburgh, and I'm happy to answer any questions.